So I'm thrilled to be joined by my friend Mohammed Shahada to talk about Gaza and the Trump plan, or whatever exactly it is. Mohammed had an excellent piece in Zateo that, Mohammed, there's so many things I want to ask you to try to understand what's happened over the last 3 weeks. I guess the first has to do with terminology. What do you call this thing? Is it a Trump plan? Is it a ceasefire deal? Is it not actually a ceasefire deal? Like, what is actually the language that would use to describe what it is that happened that has led to some kind of new phase that we're in now?
I think the most appropriate language is the one coming from mediators. But first of all, thanks so much, Peter, for having me. Always appreciate our discussions. So as soon as I heard Hamas's acceptance, the deal going through, etc., I was surprised that I didn't feel much of anything. And then I called friends in Gaza on the ground, friends around the world, experts, etc. Nobody was feeling any sort of optimism or achievement. And then I was briefed on meetings with Arab mediators, Arab leaders, and the Turkish foreign minister. And they were asked exactly about what exactly happened. Like, it felt so rushed, it felt so sudden and abrupt. And my favorite answer is one coming from one Arab head of state, one of the mediating countries, that as soon as he was asked, how did you get a deal so fast? His eyes rolled and he said, it was the Nobel Peace Prize. It was the Nobel Peace Prize. And he kept repeating it mindlessly. The verbatim quote was, when I asked why the rush, the official said Trump wanted the Nobel Peace Prize. He doesn't care about the price of what would it take to get it. He wanted it before Friday because of the nomination. He added that Steve Witkoff was panicking, desperate to get it before the deadline, convinced that he could go to Trump saying, I brought you the Nobel Prize. So that's the mentality that was at play here. Another one was asked about, like, how did they get the deal so fast? And he said it's because all of them are a bunch of businessmen who think that the country is their company and they run it through their offices, not through institutions. They go into meetings, never take any notes, then they come out, talk to the president, who tweets out impressions to the country. And that Arab leader is basically saying that he's seeing the same mentality in the entire Trump team. Quote, impulsive, unaccountable, convinced that intuition and spectacle substitute for policy. They start, they hit a wall, they change direction, they don't learn, they just pivot to the next headline. And I thought it sums up this perfectly. Another Arab leader was asked about this. He said, this is not a plan and it's not a framework, it's a political performance. And that was the end of it. I was surprised that it did hold that far. I expected it to collapse immediately after the release of Israeli hostages. But what changed is basically that Trump, as soon as he got this deal that supposedly ended a 3,000-year-old war between Jews and Muslims and Christians and whatever, as soon as he got this deal, you see the entire mainstream media actually applauding him.
Yes.
And he doesn't get attacked by anybody, which I think is the first in his lifetime. So he liked that idea of being on the receiving end of praise and compliments, and that's why he wanted the deal to stick. He didn't want it to collapse so fast, so soon. Like, now it's the talk of the town instead of the Epstein files or any of the other issues that were there before.
I realize I failed to introduce Mohammed. I guess I feel like he's so well known he doesn't need introduction. But Mohammed is a Gaza-born political analyst and a visiting fellow at the European Council on Foreign Relations, and I just think by far one of the best and smartest and most insightful and most ethical commentators on Palestine and Israel. So it didn't fall apart. So, as you said, the Israeli hostages have been released, although there are still some dead bodies, and there were Palestinian captives that were released. The plan is supposed to have 3 phases, right? Can you explain what those are and whether we're going to ever get past this first phase and what you think is likely to play out?
Oh, well, basically, the first phase was the immediate one that we see unfolding now. It was to be a ceasefire, the return of Israeli hostages, the return of Palestinian captives and hostages, the over 1,700 that were never tried or charged or even suspected of any wrongdoing, that were held as, quote, bargaining chips or strategic assets. And it had other elements to it as well. So if I was, let's say, a school teacher and I wanted to give a grade for Israel's performance, it would be around D minus, because they did get the hostages back and released the amount of numbers of Palestinians that were supposed to be released. They tampered with the list of Palestinians that were supposed to be freed, including people like Marwan Barghouti, the Palestinian Mandela, and prevented his release despite all kinds of pressure. and then they reneged on every other obligation they had under the deal. So I'll give you an example. Israel is now occupying 58% of the Gaza Strip. It is entirely depopulated. No Palestinian is allowed to walk there. Anybody that tries to come close is shot dead on sight. There was a debate, a literal debate yesterday in Netanyahu's cabinet, in which Itamar Ben-Gvir was suggesting that even children who approach that invisible line should be murdered on the spot. And the question that was posed is that the soldiers were struggling. They would shoot at adult men, but they wouldn't shoot at kids with donkeys because they didn't know who to shoot first, the donkey or the child. And then Ben-Gvir said, shoot both, shoot the kids. So that's basically the other element. The third element is that in that 58%, Israel is doing massive demolition work until right now. So you hear all talk from Kushner, etc., about reconstruction in the area under Israel's control. If there's any intent of reconstruction, why are they destroying every single house that's left there? It's three major Israeli settler contracting groups. It's Israeli civilian settlers that go in with bulldozers and knock down homes one after the other. My friends in Gaza, right before jumping on this call, I called a couple of colleagues in Gaza City. They said the bombing, the noises of machine guns, they never stop in the 58% that Israel is controlling because it is a non-stop demolition work. They blow up buildings from the inside, or they plant mines, etc., or they go in and knock it down with bulldozers. There's the other element that Israel was supposed to fulfill with opening the Rafah border crossing for people to be able to leave. Like Netanyahu's entire idea of what he calls voluntary migration, starve to death or get bombed or leave Gaza permanently. And you have people desperate in need of leaving for medical treatment, etc. And Israel did not open the Rafah border crossing. The reason is because the Trump agreement said that Rafah should be opened to both ways, that people should be allowed back in Gaza as well. So now we are about 2 weeks into the ceasefire. Not a single person has crossed the Rafah crossing. There's the other element of Israel was supposed to suspend all military operations, including airstrikes. That never happened. We see Israel killing in the first 10 days about 80 people. If you put that number, 8 people per day in the US, that would be called a massacre or a mass shooting. In Israel, it doesn't even make a headline. I think in one day, Israel killed, in one specific day, they killed over 43 people in a single day, where they bombed Gaza with 100 airstrikes. And then you have the element of aid that is going into Gaza. So Israel was supposed to allow 600 trucks per day, and they are allowing now about 90 per day, which is way less than what Israel was allowing during the genocide. So in the final days before the ceasefire, Israel was allowing into Gaza about 170 trucks per day some days. Sometimes it would go all the way up. Others, it would be 20 per day. It was fluctuating like Bitcoin. But now it's about 90 instead of 600. So Gaza needs at minimum 1,000 trucks per day. 90 is 10% or even less, 9% of Gaza's minimal need for survival. So, and the way they allow these things in, the majority of them are commercial products. They're not humanitarian aid. So they are sold on the market for profit. So no one can afford it. A single chicken in Gaza costs now about $50 or $75 for a chicken. No one has those financial means. But it looks like what is called a Potemkin village, sort of a facade that is there to give the impression of something that is not. So when Israel allows chicken to go into Gaza for one day and meat to go the next day, and then nothing for a week, and they allow it in small quantities, it would reach a cafe or restaurant that would produce a video and put it on social media. And then Israel would point at that video and say, look, there's chicken in Gaza, there's meat in Gaza, there's no famine. So it's very cynical. And then you have the element of Palestinian bodies that have been returned systematically versus Israeli bodies that are being returned gradually from Gaza. And Hamas was supposed to return 25 dead Israeli hostages. I think they found about 12 until now. They made it clear during the ceasefire negotiations that it is virtually impossible to find all of those bodies because of the sheer amount of rubble that is all around Gaza. You have 80,000, you have about 50 million tons of rubble in Gaza at the moment, the destroyed buildings, which is why Israel's own chief of Mossad was saying in January this year that it would be virtually impossible to find those dead hostages. And you have the element of basically Israel exploiting the inability to find those bodies to renege on everything they can with the ceasefire. So that's the first phase.
This has been a free preview of my weekly conversation. If you'd like to hear the rest and support my work, please consider subscribing at peterbeinart.substack.com.